Welcome back to Full Spectrum Frontiers, where we explore the critical intersections of leadership, innovation, and national security. I'm your host, Bennett Tanton, and today I'm honored to welcome a true powerhouse in the world of business development and corporate strategy, Tony Vengel. Tony currently serves as a sales, business development, and corporate strategy executive with the Midwest MicroElectronics Consortium, MMEC. As an Air Force veteran with an impressive 22 years of military service, Tony has a deep well of experience in operations, acquisitions, and the development of advanced weapon systems, skills that seamlessly translate into his impactful work in the private sector. Since transitioning from the military, Tony has been instrumental in the growth of 3 companies, guiding each from startup to successful acquisition by prime contractors. His strategic vision and ability to foster a proactive, positive corporate culture have consistently amplified company value and customer satisfaction, making him a force to be reckoned with in both military and civilian arenas. Beyond his professional accomplishments, Tony is a passionate advocate for staying active, with hobbies ranging from hiking and running to golfing, swimming, and even gardening. In today's episode, we'll dive into Tony's unique journey, from shaping advanced weapon systems in the Air Force to building thriving businesses in the private sector, and explore how his leadership philosophy can inspire innovation and drive success in challenging environments. Get ready for a conversation packed with actionable insights and stories of perseverance. Let's get started. All right, Tony. Tony or Anthony?
Tony's fine.
All right, Tony. So tell us who you are and what you do.
I'm Tony Vengel. I'm a defense industry consultant. Work for a few different folks. Primarily right now, I'm working for the Midwest MicroElectronics Consortium, MMEC. But there are other customers out there. I've spent 22 years in the Air Force, 12 active, 10 in the reserves. As an operator in the missile and space operations, as well in the acquisition arena as a contract officer and program manager.
So lots of time in Montana?
I was at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. I picked
Missouri.
the southernmost base because I grew up in Southern California. So,
because who wants to live in Montana? Even though I work in Montana State, right? Who wants to live in Montana?
I've gone through Montana a few times. I was up in Bozeman, I think, recently, visiting a company that has germanium windows.
Man. Yeah.
And what a beautiful place.
Yeah, I'm just joking anyway. It's kind of to the people that work at Montana State that are listening to this. It's kind of like, because I was just on the phone with our friend August the other day, yesterday, and he was snow blowing his driveway already. So that's always fun. I mean, and I live in upstate New York, so I get snow and I understand, but man, it's a little early. It's
early. It's global freezing, I think.
So to go off of what we were talking about before I hit the record button, I like to do this stuff as you remember tow missiles?
Yeah, I do.
The wire guided missiles, right?
Yeah, well,
I always liked that where you could fire and then aim. Right? So it's like ready, fire, ready, fire, aim instead of whatever, so it's that's how I like to do a lot of stuff, because if you, as we know, and especially in government stuff, it takes forever to get, if you don't execute, it just flounders, right? And you're waiting on somebody to sign this or do that or make some remediation. So, I mean, I guess you could always, send future rounds, right? To watch where the impact is and walk into the target, but I'd much rather shoot a tow missile. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, now you got attritable mission UASs that have visible and infrared sensors on the front of them, and they have communication back to a handheld JTAC that can, where the guy or the person
Right.
can say, hey,
So there
take
you
that,
go.
but not that, right? So
Same concept, just lasers now, space lasers. Right.
yeah, lasers and imagery and
Yeah.
connecting through the RF, right?
Man,
So
technology. I just dated myself with the tow missile, right? So
what's interesting is that there was a system, and I don't know what I can say, and I probably shouldn't say it. So, but there was a replacement for the tow, which included optical devices. So,
right.
yeah, it was good.
Yeah, the one thing I saw done was the which replaced it once I got out of the Marine Corps and joined the Army. They had I guess it was a few years into my Army career, we got the Javelin, and that was just holy moly, game changer.
Yeah, the Javelin. I know a lot about the Javelin. They have the Clue, which is
the Clue that
it's a two-person job, right?
$250,000 sight, right?
Yeah, well, it had a mid-wave infrared camera. I was trying to push a mid-wave infrared camera into that from working with, and so it turns out I think Lockheed and Raytheon made a deal on the Javelin. I think Raytheon has the sensor on the front of the munition and the munition, and Lockheed has the Clue. The device. So, and they have all the componentry and optics and sensors inside there.
Yeah, it's a devastating weapon, though. It changed the game for light infantry. I know that. I remember going to the National Training Center out there in sunny California.
Yeah,
and we were, light units don't usually go out there.
Is that in Barstow?
Yes. So we Fort Irwin, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Fort Irwin. So we light units don't usually go out there. We usually just do JRTC and at Fort Polk. And
where's Fort Polk?
That's in Louisiana. So
wow.
But because we were going to the desert, I guess they sent us to Irwin because it's more deserty, right? So it was the first time any light unit had carried the Javelin into that situation. And we were just taking down armored vehicles left and right, whereas in light units usually had an issue with that, right? So we definitely put a dent into the Fort Irwin's armor, or the what would you call it? The Op4's armor. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's interesting to think the tank. I mean, what its application and what its use is going to be going forward. I mean,
and whenever you try to get rid of them, you're like, ooh, yeah. I mean, it's like you'll get rid of them, and then you'll like, wait, we actually need them again. It's like it's hard to say.
It's like water desalinization in Santa Barbara.
Yes, right.
If you have a 100-year drought, you need it.
Yeah, right.
We don't need it.
So where are you in California?
I'm in a little town called Solvang. It's north of Santa Barbara, about 30 minutes.
Yeah, I spent
right by Reagan's Ranch.
Yeah, I spent a decent amount of time in Lompoc.
Yeah, Vandenberg.
So not that far, right?
Yeah, no, I go out to the base.
At Vandenberg.
I film in the infrared launches out at the base.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like the area. We did that was our back in my military days. How do I say it?
Are we recording right now?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, got it.
So I did I guess you would call them JTF missions, Joint Task Force missions, out of when we stayed in Vandenberg for months and months, and we'd fly out and go down to like Los Padres National Forest,
right,
and do a lot of drug interdiction and stuff out of there. So we spent a good amount of time at Vandenberg.
Yeah, I was riding my bike. I have a road bike. I haven't ridden in a while, but it was the 4th of July, and I was riding out into the forest on a road, and I started seeing helicopters flying around. And then about 8 white trucks, Fords, came barreling down the hill, and there was a bust ongoing at the time. So,
Right.
huh,
Yeah. Get those National Forest Service guys out there, the law enforcement. The National Forest Service law enforcement is scary, and people don't even realize it exists. But
yeah,
it's scary.
park rangers, they can carry a gun, right?
Yeah, but it's these guys are like a level. It's kind of like the response to it's so the LE guys that work for the National Forest Service are like a react team. It's more like an HRT SWAT type organization. They're not park rangers. I wouldn't say that at all.
Not like in Elf
No.
who was
Right. So these guys are they're some highly trained individuals, right? And this is what basically the unit was created for, was to fight the war on drugs, I guess. Or
yeah. Well, now it's
mobile
crossed
meth labs
over.
and stuff. It's like Breaking Bad. So anyway,
Yeah, you got to be pretty desperate in that situation.
yeah. So either way,
Hmm.
full spectrum frontiers. What does that mean to you? When you hear that phrase, full spectrum frontiers in a national security sense, what does that mean to you?
So, in college and high school, I didn't know what the electromagnetic spectrum was. Learned about it after and acquiring systems, weapon systems, and fighting against weapon systems that utilize some portion of the spectrum. So that, to me, full spectrum means utilizing portions of the spectrum that only we can see in or hear in or whatever in. There was a time where we dominated pretty much all the spectrum, we being the United States. And in the way that humanity goes, warfare is a thing, and it's needed everywhere, so that we don't get bullied. And exploiting that portion of the spectrum that we can operate in alone is really important to the warfighter.
Absolutely. Agreed. Yeah, I kind of do that with Battle Sight a little bit, you know. Um, but yeah, and it's not just optical either. It's also audio and visual and all the things, right?
Yeah, if you get the electromagnetic wall chart, I've got one in my office here, and I think Raytheon actually created it, but it's one of the best tools ever because it gives you the pretty much the whole spectrum from UV, microwave, millimeter wave, terahertz, infrared. In my little world is the infrared portion. If you look at the whole spectrum, it's a very small segment of it. And so we're investing. The government is investing in technologies that exploit that spectrum.
So what are some like up and coming technologies? I mean, if you can't give away too much, but wave tops kind of stuff that are like really like coming online there, trying to like basically changing the game a little bit. Since we
Well,
talked about our advantage.
yeah, laser communication, I think, is going to be an important thing. Uncorruptible, unspoofable, point to point communication is important, and you could do that through lasers. I think quantum imaging, quantum computing, anything at the quantum level is going to, again, make it more secure. Like if you were to look into the triad, the nuclear deterrence that we have, how are we going to keep the command and control in that situation secure, right?
Oh yeah.
Needs to be the most secure, right? And all the time. And security, I think, in the RF or in the spectrum it's a constant game, right? You can come up with tactics or code or a thing to defeat the entry point, but it's always a moving target. So I think the enemies are always trying to, and we're trying to always break in, and there are others trying to break in. So you get into the quantum space, and I think you get things more secure, and that's not just in buildings, but it's in the battlefield, right? Communicating securely on the battlefield. is critical. And the battlefield of the future may be, sorry if I'm kind of moving, but
No, go do it.
it's going to be mostly bot on bot. If you can get a bot to do what you're doing without putting a man or a person at risk, you should do it, right? And without decreasing your capability or your ability to be effective on the battlefield. And that's why the discussion earlier on tanks is like, what role? Okay, remote control tanks, I get it. You're going to have to occupy space. That's the Army's argument. You got to occupy. You're going to use the Army. So, and then, the war is ongoing right now in the cyber world. We may lose the war and not even know it in some cases.
Yeah, right.
It happened in the ether. And that's all part of the spectrum.
It's crazy. Yeah, some of the stuff.
So I had quantum, and semiconductor fab. There's new technologies that are going to go on in that arena. The atomic growth of materials and sensors. That's a place that's really critical across the board for national security. Everything, not just DoD, but your computers, and then affiliated to all of it is workforce. We've got to invest in a workforce that is capable and willing and motivated
and educated in this stuff, right?
Yeah. At MMEC, one of the things that we're talking about is trying to, people want to serve the military. That's one thing, right? Well, there's other ways to serve your country. One of them is becoming an engineer, and I think this hopefully will be a campaign because we need engineers, and it doesn't matter where you come from or what your name is. If you can do the math and the engineering, there's a place for you.
No, I know we need them, but is there a shortage of them?
Yes. So
okay,
2030, we're going to be probably close to 60,000 engineers short. And that's
wow.
Electrical, mechanical.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask too. The engineering you're talking about, mechanical, electrical.
Yeah, but it goes further than that. You got computer engineering, you got math, all contributing to all of it. Anything STEM, and there is a cerebral connection between the arts and STEM. So you can't devalue art, right? And that, so you got the STEAM aspect of things. And we just so getting back to the service side of it, we create a marketing campaign around, creating the perception that this is good for the country. It's good for you. It's a good thing. You're serving, right? If you go to work you get your E degree and you go to work for Lockheed or Montana State or whoever developing technology, you're doing a service to the country. So we thank you. That should be the message.
Yeah, not just, you don't have to serve in the military to serve the country. Not even a little bit. I mean, and that, it's almost like engineering, like the way that you describe it. It's almost like, we've got this big push for the trades, right? It's almost like engineering needs to be focused on the same way, right?
Yes, the trades, absolutely. Just talking with somebody, can't find a welder, right? That knows how to weld well.
Yeah, right.
So right. The trades are paying well. Technicians in the semiconductor fab, there's a huge shortage of those. The equipment that they use, usually run by technicians, it's on the job training. You get it from Axitron or whoever it might be, and you get it in the building, you follow the instructions to set it up. But there's not a lot of people that know that. One of the things the MMEC is doing is investing in that know-how and that part of the workforce development.
I mean, you and I in the past have talked a lot about like nuclear, right? And the energy sector, right? Nuclear. And we come back to welding. Everything in that plant is welded.
Yeah.
If you don't have good welders, think of the things that could go wrong with that, and these guys make so much money. It's absolutely insane. So it's like the incentive is there, but I don't know what it is. Like people, it's just a focus that we have to shift, right? As a society to back to the manufacturing mindset, right? And it kind of all comes together.
Yeah, you can't send certain things overseas. We need capability here, right? And the chasing of the cost of goods sold down to the bottom has put us in a tough situation right now in the semiconductor fab and across the board, the trades. But the way I look at it, that the trades, young kid is evaluating whether he or she should go to college, or if she wants to be a electrician who's making 50 to 75 bucks an hour.
Yeah.
Which is a decent living. Now in California, it'd be tough, at that, just to be able to afford a house. The economies as such, but there are places though that'll cover you well. So the technicians in the semiconductor fab arena, what we're looking for, just somebody that's good with their hands, that's a good decision maker, that's clear-minded.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the qualifications. Now, if you want to come in, we've got internship programs at many of the junior college. I can't use junior college, community colleges around the country.
People still use that term though, but yes.
Yeah, I guess some people might find it offensive, but
but community colleges.
So I think there's a push, and a lot of the workforce development money that's coming from the DoD through CHIPS Act and then through Commerce for workforce development is going into the trades, which is a good thing.
So how much did the CHIPS Act change the game?
Well, I think significantly. Now, if you think you're going to void the gap that we've created over 40 years of not creating a workforce or developing this technology, because it's basically TSMC and it's been moved overseas for reasons that are economic. Now we need it back. I think the efforts ongoing right now through the CHIPS Act are helping. Now, you've got, for instance, our little world, MMEC, you've got 8 hubs. Each one has a pot of workforce development dollars, and they're all executing to their scope. But I think down the road, I think a consolidated approach for workforce development is something that, not Commerce Department and DoD, everybody should be looking at it at the really high level and have the money pooled together in ways that are more synergistic. And so you can get more folks into STEAM and STEM, as well, provide training opportunities for people that are past the K through 12 and want a purpose, want a tool that they can add to their own tool chest. There's a lot of opportunities for that, and we're all actively trying to point potentials to that. And the ultimate metric is getting these folks placed with companies that need it.
Yes.
And that's one of the places where I'll personally step in as we get undergraduate, graduate, and PhDs out of places like Ohio State, Montana State, and Penn State. We'll get them with, if they want to work for companies in the infrared world, it'll be meeting one, right? So,
right.
And we have network of folks across the board that can feed them into not just the infrared world, but the RF and other parts of the spectrum where they're
That's the beauty of the consortium, right?
Yes, and it's one of the roles I play as a connecting the dots and making sure the right people know each other so that they can actually create the business.
Right. So we kind of need, how is it going though? Like overall, like, have we been doing the right things? I know we have a long way to go, right? But to get these things over here, I'm in a unique position where I live is a hub of all of this. It's I wouldn't say it's a hub, but it's a big point because we have a giant semiconductor manufacturer coming into the Syracuse area with, oh God, why can't I remember the name? It just flew right out of my head.
Not Highlinks.
No. Oh man. Oh my gosh. I can't believe it.
Not Intel.
No.
TSMC.
Micron.
Micron. There you go.
Yeah. Micron's coming into this area, and literally the plant that they're building will employ somewhere around 9,000 people.
Oh, that's fantastic. And
Absolutely insane. And I know that was done because that's the direct, CHIPS Act money. It was a lot of influence with that. We also have lots of water, lots of power. We have all the things, right, that fit the mold. But this, I haven't
where's
heard
3
about
Mile Island?
3 Mile Island is in downstate. That's like Westchester, New York.
Got it.
But again, we have 3 nuclear power plants within half an hour drive from where this plant's being built, right? So that's part of the idea is you got to have power, you got to have water, and you got to have space, really, and then the workforce. So I'm just wondering, in general, from your point of view and from where we're at, how is it going? Like, are we bringing the companies that need to come here or come back even? Is that happening?
It is happening. I mean, you can read the press. The TSMC's got a facility that they built up in, I think it's Glendale or down in Phoenix area. You've got Intel there. You've got Intel putting a facility in Ohio, just real close to Ohio State, leveraging a lot of that. You've got that whole area in Columbus is really blown up. New
huge.
Albany. You look at property values in New Albany, and 10 times probably what they were 5 years ago.
Yeah,
so,
it's insane. It's the same thing here. Same kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure. Crazy. Somebody's going to go online and say, "Yeah, I predicted this."
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I did predict when the Rams were going to move to LA and that the property in Inglewood would go up. Inglewood in LA used to be the high-end part of LA.
Yeah.
And then over time, it kind of fell off, and now it's on its way back up. The property values are going up, but I should have bought in Inglewood in like
should have, could have, would have, right?
Yeah, hindsight's always 20/20. So you touched on the nuclear aspect of things. Nuclear power. It seems that I think the nuclear industry didn't market themselves properly.
Horribly.
And they, rightfully so. You got a bunch of really smart people that are going about this in the right way. I think it's the only real answer for long-term power on the planet. Now, the disposal and the waste and the byproduct is an issue, but it's
not insurmountable.
It's not a physics issue; it's an engineering issue. Right? How do we either recycle it or get rid of it somewhere into space, wherever, and make it so that it's not harmful to the ground. And so that's should be solved. Investment in that arena. And then, mobile nuclear devices, smaller nuclear devices that, can power other things. The military has obvious needs for it in the submarine arena.
And they're developing it as we speak. So,
yeah. So I think, and I see a change and a shift, not necessarily in California. We've got one nuclear power plant left, Diablo Canyon, which is, about
right. I've been there.
Hour north of me, and I grew up in Morro Bay, close to there, and when it was first stood up, and boy, the folks were going crazy then. And I still am friends with a lot of folks that are just, mad that it was there. By the way, I think it was built on a fault line. I don't know if that's urban legend, but
for some reason though, that seems to be a trend. Because there's multiple nuclear plants that have been built on fault lines, and I don't know what that's about. I have no idea why. That's some research I need to do. Is why would they do that?
Maybe they didn't think that it was, or I
Yeah,
can't
right.
imagine it would be on purpose. It just wasn't
Especially a
something
fault
I thought
line
about.
in California. Like, what are we doing? Right?
Yeah, that's a direct line to that San Andreas fault,
Yeah,
the
right.
mother of all faults, right? Yeah. So I don't really think about earthquakes, but so going back to the nuclear side of things, now I think I talked to you about it, but you've got a water issue in
Oh,
really the
yes. Correct.
Western United States. Even if you were going to say, I'm not going to use the nuclear power plant to power just for the buildings, but I could use it to do desal for the Western United States, really all the United States if you wanted to.
Hmm.
And now water's free. So, um, that that's revolutionary thought. But if you had free water, it would just, could spawn the economy
Absolutely.
on growth, right? So, and you won't go through any 100-year droughts that we had. That was remedied 2 years ago when we got, I think I got 13 inches of rain one day.
Yeah, that was absolutely amazing. It was one of the coolest things to see that California finally got a bunch of precipitation to quell a lot of that stuff because that is like the most precious quantity and what's the word I'm looking for? The most precious
Economic
thing.
value.
Yeah, absolutely. In California is water.
You know that there was a study done at Army Command and Staff College, or I think it's been declassified, but they talked about World War III starting with over water.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the Tigris or the Euphrates was dammed up in Turkey, and then
Yep.
people take sides. So
I mean, think about the Nile, things like that. Like that's one of the most contentious positions is where the water from the Nile River flows on the continent of Africa. It is if you're going to start a war in Africa, do something to the Nile River, see what happens. It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, that would
But if you
be.
think about it, it is the most it's one of the only non-replenishable resources that we have on the planet. It's you're not going to get rid of all of it, but you can sure contaminate it so it's not usable, right?
Right.
And or you can't drink salt water. But you and I have talked about desalination ad nauseum, right? But it's a viable technology that we've literally had for close to 100 years.
Yeah.
And it's gotten so good that why don't we do it commercially? Is it because the money's not there for it? You know what I mean? Things like that. Or is it just because it is so it does soak a lot of power.
Well, that's the oil countries, the deserts in Middle East. They have a ton of oil. So, but
Yes. And
it's gotten more efficient. The more investment you get in a technology, especially like this, where most of the physics have been solved, now you're working on just refinement and just cost.
yeah.
It's getting more efficient. So,
I mean, I think you and I talked about the Navy technology that they had that took actually I think it was wave power from the waves that actually desalinated, and there was a desal plant connected to that, and it was just like perpetual and took
yeah,
no extra power, right?
yeah. They have those unmanned, I don't know, submarines, but surface platforms that use the kinetic energy of the
Right.
power it and keep going. And that's a part of the spectrum that we haven't really explored is, what part of the spectrum is successful at communicating underwater, right?
Yes.
The the underwater exploration that's going on. Speaking of, I need to look it up, but you've got all of these minerals, with zinc and cadmium, other things that are sitting at the bottom of the ocean that
Hmm.
we are not allowed to mine. But all you have
Hmm.
to do is scrape the bottom and you get it. China is going after all of that
Right.
really hard.
But
So I need to look that up and send that to you.
yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. So talking about like the rare earth minerals, right, that we need for whether it's battery, because that's one of the biggest contentious points is we have multiple ways to make the energy, especially renewable ways. But sometimes the renewable ways have just as much downside as they do up, right? Especially when it comes to waste, and then especially like solar. Where do you put it when the sun, like you've got, yeah, it's great during the day, right? But
Right.
at night you don't have it. So do we have battery technology is what I'm talking about. And some of these minerals are horrific. They're really bad for not just the environment, but for everything, really. And the way that they're mined is horrific, and all the things, whether it's because it's low hanging fruit, right? Certain things like lithium batteries, it's kind of a low hanging fruit. There is way better technologies, but we have to have money and or more research put into them to get it done, right? But
Yeah, there's the Salton Sea down here in Southern California, huge lake bed. It could be the world's largest lithium mine in the world.
right,
So, the mining companies are going after California legislature to try and get them to allow
let
them to.
let them to get in there, right?
Yeah. So having my first assignment was at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, and they had, I think might have been coal or strip mining. And so the missile fields were in some of these abandoned strip mine areas.
Right.
But it destroys the land.
Oh, it
I
does.
mean, it really, yeah, it's so there's, I think when we mine, I don't think we ever before took into consideration how we're going to leave the place, right? We want to
Yeah,
leave it.
the reclamation part of it, right? At
Yeah,
the end of it, yeah, it's which they've shown in more east, like West Virginia, a couple of these other states, where they've done like some crazy mines with for coal,
right.
basically. And but how they actually then shut down the mines and filled things back in and added, trees and whatever back to it. And at first it still looks like horrific, right? But then you fast forward 10 years and you're like, oh wait, you couldn't even tell this this was a mine.
Yeah. Well, there should be more of
Out
that.
west, it's probably a little harder because you don't have vegetation to hide those things too.
Yeah.
But not only does the vegetation cover things, it also purifies things. That's part of what vegetation does, right? It'll soak things up and filter it out.
Yeah. It creates.
Yeah, so we got to figure out.
What did you do in the Army, Bennett?
Oh, I was just an infantryman.
And what did you carry? What were your weapons?
I carried an M4 and all the regular light infantry crap.
And did you get deployed?
I did. Not to Iraq or Afghanistan. I deployed plenty to other places, but I got out in 2003, so we didn't. I got out right before Afghanistan kicked off for my unit. But prior to that, when I was in the Marines, I had deployed to Somalia, Haiti, Bosnia twice. Well, Bosnia with the Marines and Bosnia with the Army as well. And then Egypt for a long time when I was in the Army. So not combat missions per se, but
Yeah,
but
Somalia.
different.
That's
Somalia was not,
mission.
it was nasty. Pot of mine. That was just not good. But
I was in Djibouti at one time, and it seemed like there were no laws or rules.
No, 0%, right? Zero. Yeah, there was definitely none in Somalia. You just don't know. We had no idea who was good, who was bad, who are we working with, who's this. Next thing you know, you're watching this truckload of guys with AKs just sitting there watching like food distribution. And then the next minute, they're taking that food and you can't do a damn thing about it. It's just like, why am I even here? So either way, it was not pretty or fun.
Yeah, you look at Somalia and Djibouti. When Kathy and I, we took the kids on a sailing trip through the British Virgin Islands, and we met this couple that had their two kids, and they had sailed around the world like 3 times with their kids over the last 5 years, and they were going around the Horn, and they had to pool up in a town close with other smaller vessels.
Right.
And they would fly, and they would sail in groups around that point to create safety.
Right. Like a herd of wildebeest, right? Like literally safety in numbers.
Yeah. And how many of those boat captains that are, the pirates, modern day pirates, right? We're like
literally
2024 and we still have pirates, really?
Yeah, it's bad. Down in the Med too is real bad.
Yeah. And you think about it, and so what is it? Maritime law, you're not allowed to carry or have weapons, or
like, come
on. I think I'm gonna carry. I mean, how do they police that? Do they get on the ship and look, hey, do you got your gun? No, I don't. I left it at home. So I'm hoping the pirates don't take me.
Right.
Yeah.
That's one of those, that was one of those things I saw today is, I don't want to go down some rabbit hole with this, but either way, it comes down to, like, we talk about maritime law, right? So but I talked about it in the world of like firearms, right? Let's just say firearms in the town you live in. Who's actually enforcing those laws? Right. So like, because I guess it came up, and well, this is convoluted, but either way, it's the election, like with the contentious election that we just went through. There's some stuff going on in Pennsylvania that people don't really agree with. Right. So these folks that are saying, no, these ballots are viable. Right. And we're going to count them. But the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is saying, no, they're not. So you can use this example to anything, right? So the court says, no, you can't do that. They're saying, well, then enforce it. I want to see you enforce it. Kind of like what Andrew Jackson did with folks, the Cherokee back in, the day. Where the Supreme Court said, no, they can stay there. And Andrew Jackson was like, well, okay, that's great. I want to see you enforce it.
I'm going to just do this. And,
yeah. So where do we go with things like that, with maritime law? And yes, there's laws on the books, but who actually enforces said laws?
Most laws are voluntarily.
Exactly.
Right?
They're constructs to an extent, right? Certain laws, like, oh, you can't murder people. Obviously very good laws, correct? Like, and people will enforce those laws, like your local police. But where that begins and where it ends is a little scary to me. And I look at this as a national security issue, is, who do we have to enforce this stuff, right? And I don't want more regulation and more enforcement, but you can't make the laws if you don't have teeth, or yet you don't have buy-in from the people that actually have to self-enforce or self-regulate, right? So
they passed a law that made it still to be a criminal if you're stealing anything for less than $950.
Yeah, I'd love California for that, right? Same in New York.
And Newsom had created the edict that that wasn't a felony, and so the law just passed that it is. You can't do that. So because you're smash and grabs here, they're getting ridiculous.
Oh yeah, like I literally just talked to my buddy who lives in Culver City. Is it Culver City?
Yeah, that's close.
That's right in LA, right?
Yeah.
So the airport. He lives in Culver City, and he was explaining that now they have a new DA that just got elected there. Well, not yet, but I mean, the person was elected,
right?
And they are against this, no bail stuff. So it's like, what the heck? Like, literally, some guy gets hit for murder, goes to jail, right, and then is released. Like, what is or not murder, but like domestic abuse. This is a good example.
Right.
Domestic abuse goes to jail. What's the domestic partner doing now? Locking the doors and that's it. They're safe. They just let the guy back out or the girl
Yeah.
back out, right? So like I just don't understand it. But at the end of the day, this is a whole freaking rabbit hole.
Yeah, and it
We
could
could go
be. I
down
mean,
and this is like
it's
a week's worth of episodes, right? But
yeah,
at the end of the day, these are things that we like to bring up on this podcast because it makes people think. It's national security, and your security as a family, as a person, goes way beyond the military because that's what people hear, right? It
well,
goes about food security, water security, all the things is all national security. And we've definitely hit on it with the engineering
yep.
and or manufacturing. And if we don't have these things, COVID showed us, if COVID did nothing else, it showed us that we have a huge weakness that was created by our system, right?
I'll give you
And
a
the
very specific example.
yeah,
So, I was at the time, 2019, I was buying a car with my daughter. She wanted to get credit, so helped her buy a car. She bought a really cool Honda Civic Sport Touring Mambo Jumbo. Well, 2019 occurred, COVID at the end of 19 and 20. And because cars couldn't get microprocessors, you couldn't buy a new car for a while. And so the used car market was going crazy. They came back to my daughter and offered her 150% of what she paid. And
and her car was how old at this point?
it
Like,
was, she bought an 18 in 2019.
oh wow,
So, and
150%. Yeah.
yeah, and it was
And they were still
because
going to make money and they turn around and sell it.
I was like, this is great, Marina. You can try and finally sock it to a used car dealer.
Right.
You know,
But the problem is then if she sells it and then tries to go buy something else,
yeah,
there's
no,
nothing there.
that was her logic. That was exactly her logic. She goes, I'm
Yeah.
not going to do this. I'd have to pay more,
Yeah.
So I said, well, do you need a car? You can use my,
Yeah.
because the market's going to come back down, right? The
Yeah,
used
of
car,
course.
and it has.
Yeah. I just had to buy 2 new cars. Well, I bought 2 used cars. And now I had to wait. Well, because luckily my cars made it to a certain point, right? And then they both crapped out on me right at the same time. I could have got them fixed, obviously, but they were catastrophic kind of, you need new engine repairs, right? You need new transmission. And well, your car's not worth as much as it would cost, right? All the things. So luckily the prices have come back down, but with your daughter's instance, it's like that with housing in a lot of places now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but you've got a disparity of wealth issue in California. For instance, I always had it in my head that I'd be able to afford to buy a house and raise a family here in California. Now, my daughter, unless she inherits a bunch or falls into a bunch or creates a new app that becomes a big seller, she's going to have to move out of state to find a house to buy, right? To be able to afford it.
What's the average price of a home in California right now?
Yeah, well, it's going to be
let's just say where you're at, because California is quite a big state. So.
Anywhere from 500 to 10 million. But you can't find a house for less than $500,000 here. Probably not in a good area. So,
right.
Yeah, and so it's just an issue. And I think anytime somebody like me says that, they said, he's a Democrat. He's from California. I'm like, no, I'm like, how much money do you need? I mean, we've got a lot of people struggling. We should try and figure out a way to help them. Workforce development is take some of the homeless people and see if they're good with their hands, get them working, right?
Right. Absolutely.
I think that's something we could probably do, right?
I mean, you gotta figure out, there's gotta be some statistic out there of what, like some of these people, yes, they probably have mental health issues, right? I mean, some of them are down on their luck, obviously.
Well,
but like
we got to things, but we're all
we have to
away from it, right?
And we have to find out what is going on there to help bring these people back into the fold.
Yeah, I think Kennedy said it in his inauguration speech. We as a society are going to be evaluated based on how well we take care of our, mentally ill or homeless and our elderly, right? That, talk national security, that's an indicator. If we're not doing those two things, we're falling, right?
Yeah,
The infant mortality rate, the literacy rate, are we going up? Are we going down in those third world categorization items, right? And I think, hopefully with optimism and a new focus, we can regain an uptick on all those.
right.
So,
Yeah, I spent a
hey,
lot of time in the mental health space, so I get it. It's veteran mental health space, I should say.
yeah, I apologize. Somebody's trying to reach me. Yeah. Um, so I've got a hard stop at 8. Now, what,
Okay, so if you want to, I think we've talked about plenty. I think we've added some value to the conversation, right? But if we need to hold, we can hold, or stop, we can stop. But I want to give you the last word. So when we talk about like all the stuff that we've talked about going forward with our country
yeah.
and how we can fix manufacturing and things like this, give us your last words. Give us some wisdom. And
Well, based on all the discussion, I think that the thing that sets us apart as a nation is the rule of law and our election system, which gives me good confidence that it happened without incident. Now, the results, I'll stand away from any conjecture on what. But in terms of where we're going as a nation, national security wise, the S&T budget, I think, is a place that needs to be increased. And, if communicating with your congressperson, senator, anybody, that's what puts us ahead, or keeps us ahead technology wise. The S&T budget within DoD and other places, and then R&D, and then your procurement and your productization is important in some volumes, but not necessarily for what the big primes may want. Right? Primes may want more F-35s when in fact the future of weapon and warfare is going to be bot on bot. So your next generation unmanned combat vehicle, which I think was it Anduril and General Atomics are
yep,
the two competitors in that arena.
for the most
And
part, yeah.
that's where things are go. The thing I wouldn't mention along those lines is the Air Force is talking about the UAS combat vehicle being the wingman to the piloted, and I will contest that. And I say you can put a lot of compute power on that lead UAS, and it can be doing all your AI and be directing the fight to, when am I going to use my man platform? I can use them on this mission, but not that. So, but again, we get in a rabbit hole. I'm trying to conclude, and I'll just say investment in the DoD doesn't make somebody a warmonger. We want to be a strong nation from a military standpoint so that we can proliferate the freedom offered to us here, right? We want to offer it to as many people in the world as possible, not just open markets and not just for self-serving reasons, but to really help people. I think that's, as human beings, that's our obligation, is to help other people. So I'll
Agreed.
leave it at that.
Yeah. The only thing I'll add is how many civilian applications and/or technologies have come from the Department of Defense and the research and development that they did. It's immeasurable. I mean, our main mode of talking,
Internet.
the internet. I mean, bottom line, it wouldn't have happened without Department of Defense. So, Tony, thank you for coming on. It's been great, and all the fun things, right? And we need to keep this conversation going at a later date.
You got it, Ben. I enjoyed it. Enjoyed talking with you. I look forward to seeing you again in December.
Yeah, it'll be awesome.
I will be your shield in the fiercest battle. I'll defend you from all these arrows, and the sword I wield will keep you from danger. danger. Let me be your shield.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just you, me, and the odds. We stuck together, we two peas in a pod. You dealt a bad hand, I'm there seizing the cards. We'll never be separated till we see in the gods. We've been low together, high forever. Long as we go together, we'll die whenever. Be a light, couldn't let the darkness try you ever. Truth in my word, you I lie to never. And when the world gets a little too hard, wipe your eyes, put away your sorrow. When it's war, I'll be leading the charge, and I'll be still fighting for you tomorrow. Yeah, even with a blindfold or in different time zones, could find my way to you with my eyes closed. There's nothing between us. Go to Mars or Venus, stand in front of every one of them rocks, they slinging and be a shield.
Your shield.
Yeah.
In the fiercest battle, I'll defend you.
I'll defend you
From all these arrows and the sword I will keep you from danger. Let me be your shield.
Yeah, let's go. Let me be your shield, let me be your shield. Let me be your shield, let me be your shield. Let me be your shield, let me be your shield. Let me be your shield, let me be your
You may be facing tribulation, but don't let it get you down. What I'm saying may take patience, but you're gonna make it out. I scorched my own 2 feet to pull you to safety.